Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in. As always, I am Kaylee Batesman, the Content Director at She Can Code, and in today's episode we're discussing moving the needle. How can current women in tech help future generations to come? Now, on the surface, it looks like gender imbalance in the workplace is leveling out in tech, but when you delve deeper into the statistics, there's still work to be done. Joining us today is Clare Hickie, Chief Technology Officer for EMEA at Workday, who is here to help me take a look at the current generation of women in tech, what they can do to move the needle on female representation, and how they can be the catalyst that inspires young girls. Welcome, Clare.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Good. I'm so pleased to have you here. Thank you so much, Claire, for joining us today. We'd love to kick off with a little bit of background about yourself, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. I'd be delighted to. It's going to start at the beginning. It's always a very good place to start, as the song goes. So I predominantly have worked in large blue chip organizations before joining Workday 5 years ago. In fact, my Workday anniversary was only last week, so that's a very updated number I've just given there. I did a double degree in business studies and computer studies and found myself being drawn towards the world of technology really very quickly. At the time, tech was changing rapidly. The dot-com era had started, and I quickly found myself with opportunities to progress into a really changing world. I was working for one of the GE Capital businesses when in about 98, 99, I was approached by my manager to build their first intranet. And the truth was I was actually learning C++ coding, which you don't actually need for intranets. And it was a kind of a really milestone in my career. She dropped a book on my desk one day called Understanding Intranets and said, we need one of those in 9 weeks. So I took the challenge and I got the first intranet for that division of GE Capital up and going in the 9-week period with a fantastic team behind me. So subsequently and very quickly, I became the dot-com specialist or the dot-com queen at the time. And that was with varying degrees of deployment, development, and strategy in intranets, extranets, intranets, and a lot around the digitization effort. And I even endeavored, now I'm talking about the late 90s, so I even endeavored to have a paperless office. I only allowed the office that I was in at the time that they could only print 1 day a week, which was pretty mind-boggling there and then. I then joined GSK in 2003. And although I started my work in GSK in the e-business area, I quickly spread my knowledge to more back office applications and ultimately specializing in HR application space. And that really was, again, from development to designing, deploying, and strategy. And then came the next era, which was digital transformation. So once again, I embraced that opportunity and began to really grow and learn. And in 2011, 2012, we selected Workday on the back of a partnership between HR transformation and the IT simplification agenda. And I went on to lead a very large and complex deployment from that IT perspective, but as I said, partnering really closely with HR. And then I joined Workday 5 years ago. As I had a real passion for the platform, I saw for myself the change it made. And I also really affiliated with the culture and the values of the workmates. And here at Workday, we call our employees workmates because that's what they are to us. And I remember thinking through all my interactions, you know, what a great bunch. They were incredibly experienced, incredibly professional, and such a bout of fun about them. So I remember thinking, God, I really would like to work for that organization. And then I ended up with that opportunity, as I said, now 5 years ago. So really, from my perspective, I couldn't have mapped out my career the way that it really turned out. But, you know, curiosity, taking opportunity and risks, and my hunger for technology and continuous learning really provided me with a fantastic career in technology. And I would never have wanted to be in any other profession than actually in technology.
Are you just a continuous learning there? I was thinking that because when you told your story, you were saying, I was learning C++, but actually I didn't need to learn that. And then I learned about digital transformation That wasn't really happening at the time. It was almost like you were always one step ahead. That seems to be a mindset of somebody that works in tech, to sort of always be learning and thinking what's coming next.
Yeah, and just to respond to that anyway, I mean, technology, we see that over the years, technology is continuously evolving. And so, when you have got that hunger to want to grow, the opportunity is there. The opportunity becomes available for you very quickly. And in actual fact, you also have got that time in your organizations given, and your workmates and external organizations, in providing that growth and that learning opportunity really starts to land at your desk. So, from my perspective, everything that I did in terms of taking those risks, that I didn't know something about something, but I was definitely prepared to learn it. And then, as I said, my career made that progression very quickly.
Yeah. And you took a traditional route in, so you knew what you wanted to do. Was it at the time seen as taking a bit of a risk that you took, business and computer studies, that, what did the outlook look like at the time?
I think it's interesting because, as I said, I certainly wouldn't want to have a career anywhere else other than technology. I wouldn't have definitely said that I knew what I wanted to do. I knew that I had a passion for computer studies and technology as I really started to study it. I remember doing my dissertation on UI and user experience, and that was a really long time ago. And I remember loving learning about it and the impact that it can make to organizations. And again, this was quite early days. And I think so through the growth opportunity that I had, and especially through the degrees that I chosen, I actually was in a very fortunate place because of it being a double degree. I ended up almost with that choice. But I had the business background through my studies, and then I was able to apply it from a computer studies technology perspective.
Yeah, because on here we always ask, ladies what encouraged them to go into the industry, and yourself, you seem to pick a career route that you enjoyed computer studies and the business side, and luckily it worked out, and that's the career that you stayed in. We don't hear that often. You hear a lot of ladies fall into technology, but I mean, from your side, I suppose, well, what I wanted to ask was, why is a career in tech such a great choice for women? But I suppose there are lots of advantages of working in technology, isn't there? Not just being a woman, but
Yeah, there really is. So, I really think if you start to, really look at the general uptake of roles by women in STEM, there is a clear shortage. So there are certainly some great examples of how SaaS in particular has emerged as a technology, and business skills, as we just talked about. And I think this has had a really positive impact in attracting more women into technology. I've seen a lot of colleagues shift from being business focused roles into pure technology roles. I also know many amazing women in technology, both at Workday and in many other organizations, who started their careers as developers and engineers, and they're now technology leaders and even CIOs in really large global organizations. So, a career in technology actually is for everyone. It's progressive, it's rewarding, it's exciting, and believe it or not, it actually can be fun. And many career paths are now available. So, from being a business analyst to an architect to a project manager to a consultant, you've got data scientists, developers, engineers, cybersecurity, user experience designer, and these roles and others just keep on growing. So it's that shift in terms of the evolution and looking how the job roles shift almost with it. But it really does provide a great amount of options that are actually available. And as I said, it's for everyone or for anyone.
Yes, I love the fact that you refer to it as fun, because it is a stereotype that obviously it's a misconception that the industry is not fun. But from your career journey, it sounds like you were given so much opportunity, even from the start, to progress and move to your next company. I think that is something that only people in the industry seem to know, isn't it? It's that kind of, from the outside, it's seen as
yeah, we talk about this a lot. Yeah, I think there is a perception that anyone in technology is just kind of working in a silo in a dark room.
That's it.
Coding and developing. And don't get me wrong, some people really genuinely enjoy that and do it. But there's just such a host of opportunities and roles and technology, that there's something there for everyone. And I think that that's really important in terms of when people are really starting to, and women are starting to look at their careers and think about it. Just know, do your groundwork, know that there is phenomenal sets of roles out there and technologies that you can really get involved in. It's possibly not what you perceive.
Yes. And in terms of what changes and improvements do you think the industry need to make to make it more attractive to women? You mentioned there about, flexibility, being able to move around different roles. Are there anything else that you think the industry could do to make improvements for women?
Yeah, so ultimately, the tech industry, we've talked about this a bit, but, it's still not attracting those high percentages of women. But without a doubt, it does remain a very key focus, and one of the reasons why I'm here with you today also, and where your passion comes from. And many organizations continue to aim in order to really achieve parity. But in terms of women in tech, from my perspective, that's possibly an umbrella term, and possibly there's a view of being able to put all those issues into one area. And we could possibly do better at paraphrasing this and perhaps changing the way we talk about it.
Yeah.
So maybe it's about women enabling technology, or women redefining tech, or just as simple as technology for all. And I already spoke about those various career paths and alluded to how jobs have changed and evolved massively over the years, and pretty much in line with how we have seen technology evolve. And you saw my career path was very similar to that. So, for example, there is now a huge amount of opportunities available in data, and this wasn't necessarily true 5 years ago. And additionally, we're seeing more and more roles being created in order to support AI and ML, and that's really with this recent tectonic shift. So additionally, some tech is no longer just coding, and instead it's about no code, and that's beginning to lower the barrier for entry. So these roles really partner closely with business users to collaborate more effectively, and the industry more energy and better descriptors into what tech can be to match those wealth of opportunity that's available out there today.
Yes, and the fact that you mentioned code. I mean, you said you learn from a young age, and that was something that you enjoyed. I think it does turn a lot of people off if you're not techie and you don't understand it. If you're just, your mind doesn't work in that way, you think, well, I have to learn to code to go into tech, and that's it. And we speak to a lot of product managers on here who say, I had no idea this role existed, and that I don't need to code to be in tech, and that I just need to know about the product and the user experience. But that's again something that a lot of people don't realize in tech, isn't it?
And it's interesting because younger generations are born into a world of tech, and that's really both from home and from a school perspective. And so young people are immersed really at a very early age in technology, and in fact it's really second nature to them. And it's interesting because when I was flying home from holiday, which I did last Friday, I was standing in the security queue, as you do, looking around. And I looked and I saw about 5 girls. They were possibly the age of 10 or 11, and they were all together. There was about 2 mums there with them, and they all had their heads down in their phone. Now, I actually don't think I possibly even had a calculator at that age. Yeah. And the other interesting thing that I found out lately is that, and I don't know if everyone knows this, and I find it amazing, but the youngest iOS app developer was a girl called Hannah Mohammed Rafiq. And she was age 9. Wow. So she developed a storytelling app that allows parents to record stories. Now, that's incredibly inspiring, right? Yeah. And so in order to get young women into technology, we really need to start sparking that curiosity into platforms that we take for granted, and as technology involves, to encourage them to really start thinking about maybe how the tech is designed, developed, and even can be improved upon. Hannah is an inspiration for all.
Definitely. I think as well, it helps when, if that young girl had somebody in her life, or an after school club or something, a teacher or a parent that really inspired her to go in that direction. Because I wanted to ask you a little bit about what education systems can do to encourage more girls into STEM.
Yeah.
You know, you yourself, what encouraged you when you were picking, you know, what subjects you wanted to do? There must have been somebody that inspired you to think, oh yeah, computer systems is for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. And you just kind of really raised a memory with me that came up. I remember having IT classes in school, and there was a computer room of about maybe 5, probably of the biggest computers in the world that we've probably ever seen. And I remember we used to all get really excited about the fact that we could go and use the computer room and see what we could start generating. But you know, also, you know, organizations are doing an awful lot in really trying to encourage more girls into STEM, and equally what they can do from an education perspective, or what the education systems can do. So, you know, I really want to just talk a little bit about, from a Workday perspective, as this will give some insight into our focus in this area, which ultimately impacts those education systems. And I know that many organizations have that same similar focus. So our vision is to make STEM learning more accessible and shift perceptions about the role of technology that can play to students in terms of their future career choices. So we have an education outreach strategy that's based around students at the core of our efforts, with strong support really provided for educators and parents to enable their students. And our goal is to make STEM learning far more accessible for everyone and encourage that curiosity from a really young age. And we engage proactively with educators to empower them to support their students on their STEM journeys by providing workshops and supporting, you know, their classroom materials. And our 2024 focus will expand to incorporate parents. And it's how we can provide basic literacy to support and engage in a really, really meaningful way with their children. That's possibly, you know, where Hannah's journey and inspiration started to come from.
Yeah.
So, you know, our new kind of that Try5 STEM primary program will start up also in collaboration with one of our universities here in Dublin. That's to deliver hands-on practical STEM modules to over 600 children. And that's from 4th, 5th and 6th class. So really quite young. And our transition year work experience program also kind of launched last February. And we're really committed to hosting a 1-week in-house program for over 60 students every year. So our World of Work program delivers mentoring to secondary schools, and our Industry Insights workshop invites teachers and school principals into Workday to learn about the varied career paths and key competencies and skills that are really required to unlock those pathways. So overall, I really believe that educators need to engage more collaboratively with industry to drive STEM education forward. And there's, you know, there really is an appetite at an industry level to effect change. And we really should take advantage of this and try to align that kind of the triple helix of government, academia, and industry. And I even mentioned parents, to think more collectively in terms of how we can drive that meaningful change.
Yes, I love the fact that obviously you focus on students, but that also you focus on parents and teachers, because the influence that they can have on a young child's career path is just, you know, the amount of people that I speak to on here where they say, well, you know, it was a teacher who mentioned something, or it was a parent that worked in that area, or they knew somebody in tech. And yeah, it just ensure that they understand that the roles that are available. Because I mean, I remember I've told this story before on the podcast, but when I was at school, I got told because I'm left-handed, I'm probably creative, I should be a florist. But that's because my career advisor didn't really know many career paths. And, you know, they come out with something very strange that you sort of think, well, you know, they've ticked their box as a career advisor and that's it. But if the people that are around you don't understand the roles that are available, how can you pick those up? And unless you attend a careers fair, and you wouldn't do that until you started at university perhaps, and by then you've probably already been influenced by somebody else. So yeah, brilliant that it's not just the students that you focus on, but influences from all around.
Yeah.
In terms of female tech leaders, what can they do to help generations below them?
Well, they can really help in many ways, and that's from mentoring in order to provide guidance and support to overcome challenges, really help navigate career choices, to advocating for women also when they're not in the room, kind of that sponsor role.
Yeah.
They can open doors to meet and connect with women at different stages in their journey. And this enables a forum to share experiences and build up relationships. And really, again, it's about growing those connections, right? So they can act as role models equally. And this is really important by inspiring and motivating, generations below them. Additionally, it's about breaking down barriers, and they can do this, right? Raise awareness and educate, and that ultimately will start paving the way for a more diverse and inclusive industry. So, role leaders in technology are incredibly important to the next generation.
Yes, definitely. And it goes back as well to the phrase of you can't be what you can't see. And just those, sometimes the women in tech, they don't quite realize they have a great story to share is the other thing. It's like, you have a fab story, you came into the tech industry and, you're doing incredibly well. And I don't think all women in tech realize the value of just sharing their story and inspiring generations below them. Let alone then going on to mentor somebody else and to ensure that you're not pulling up the ladder behind you, I suppose is the phrase. But yes, definitely, I think there is more that female leaders can do. And also on more of the more selfish side of that, I suppose, it is good for your career as well to be seen as a spokesperson that's helping the generation behind you, and to really put yourself out there. I had a great podcast with a few ladies who are mentors, and they wanted to share actually what they get out of being mentors, and not just all about their mentees, but actually the value that has come from stepping forward to be a mentor. It's really improved their career path.
I totally agree. And you know what, I also kind of want to make the remark, is like, try stopping me, because I think this is so important. And it's interesting because when I start to reflect on my own career, I really realized that my sponsors, and again, they're the people that spoke to me when I wasn't in the room, they had a huge part to play in really lifting me up. And also in turn, I'm now reciprocating that, and have done for a number of years, and doing the same for many fantastic women in technology. I also do a lot of mentoring, and I watch out for opportunities for my mentees, and I really want them to excel. And to some degree, it can also be about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And in my previous organization, I was responsible, additional to my day job, for the IT graduate program. And this really was a great elevator to push graduates, just out of uni up the ladder. And I now look back, and I know many who started as that fresh graduate, and they're managers, they're directors, they're senior directors, and they're even vice presidents, which really does make me very proud. And I'm still in contact with many. We talk a fair bit, and I'm still always there for them. But I love to hear, in terms of their progression and their next move, equally in terms of their journey. And I think it's really important also. I sponsor, I was previously co-lead for this role, but I sponsor Women at Workday for Dublin. So that really is about fostering a global community that's open to all, and we support and connect and we empower women and other gender minorities and any person who really values our community. So we create a safe space where everyone can share their stories and have an opportunity to learn and understand about their own bias and behaviours. And we do this through open spaces, presentations, and networking, which is important. Now, we don't have all the answers, right? But we're always here to create that container to have those discussions, which will really then hopefully bring about a change. I'm also a member of an external community of women in technology. It's called the T200. And their mission is to foster and celebrate and advance women technology in tech. And this group of women are phenomenal, and they really are selfless. And the mission is to lift up the next woman. So it's been a fantastic journey for me to be part of that group. And then kind of more recently, I also took on a co-lead role in a community here in Ireland called Connecting Women in Tech, and I do that on behalf of Workday. And this is really a network of over 20 Irish-based technology companies. And with the shared mission is to attract and to retrain and really promote women in the technology sector. So in answer the question, you know, I'm on my way out, I suspect, in the next decade, but so important for me that we have got these generations of young women behind me that I can always look back and say, wow, you know, look, you know, they changed the world and they changed the world of tech.
Yes, I love that, because I wanted to ask you about elevating other women as you progressed in your career. And some of these things that you just mentioned there, I'm assuming as you progressed in your career, you know, they are connections that you made and initiatives that you become part of throughout your career. But you also mentioned something that is, you know, super simple that people can start with, and that is just name dropping someone and just sponsorship and just being an advocate for somebody that isn't in the room. It's just the easiest way to lift somebody that isn't even there. And as you go, obviously, in your career, as you progress, you've now picked up, you know, great initiatives that you're working with. But that one simple thing, that sponsorship, can really help, can't it?
Well, hugely.
We're firm believers here, as I said, that you can't be what you can't see. It is a phrase that we use often on this podcast. So who are your female role models in tech?
So I'm first going to attribute that to all the women in Workday who are phenomenal. And also, you know, it's the CIOs, the CTOs, the CISOs, the CDOs, and they're of those external communities that I've mentioned. You know, that T200, got so many people right across the globe and in diverse industries. So I definitely attribute a lot of in terms of, you know, where my role model actually started to come from, and continue does, because actually that doesn't stop for me either.
Yeah.
And women leaders in tech in previous organization, and in general, you know, women in tech right way through, you know, my own career journey. But to name a few, there was a lady. It was one of my very first jobs, and her name was Brenda Johnson. And she was the vice president for IT at a very large publishing house that I was working for. And then there was a lady called Michelle Carroll and also Maureen Wedderburn, and they were part of my GSK journey. And then when I joined Workday, our first CIO was a lady called Diana McKenzie. And also our second CIO was a woman called Sherry Rhodes. And additionally, we got Carolyn O'Reilly, she's the GM for analytics, and we got Andrea Roos, who's the senior vice president in our product development. And finally, a phenomenal lady called Chris Byrne, who is our senior vice president for technology operations and our Dublin site leader. You know, there were so many, but what's always taken about my career is I always watch and I look for these role models, and I take the best of what I think I can then amplify, you know, through my journey, my experiences, and even my own personality.
Yes, I love that you just said that you take parts from each, because you're right, role models change as well throughout your career. I think when I was younger, I didn't look at, you know, somebody that was vice president of a company and think that is who I want to be. You can't always make that connection. It's too big of a leap at that time, and you need somebody that's at least middle management to aspire to be like. So it definitely changes throughout your career. And I love that you said you take parts, because there are some wonderful ladies in tech who I look at and I think, realistically, I'm never going to be like you. But I love parts of, you know, you got a PhD or whatever it may be. And I love that you do that. That's not for me, and I'm not ever going to get there. But you can take parts of that woman's passion and drive. Even though, you know, you probably won't go on to be exactly like them, which is lovely to hear that you've taken that from all different places. You mentioned role models in tech, though. Have you had other role models throughout your life in other areas?
I mean, I've had role models across HR. I've role models as CEOs. So I got role models in the media. Like I generally, as I said, I look. I notice, And you know, I look at those qualities and going, okay, you know what? I'm going to try and see if that works for me. Because sometimes you have to change a pattern equally, right? It's not always easy, you know, in terms of being listened to or having an impact. So looking and at these role models and taking what works for them, and as I said, is trying to amplify that in terms of, like, you know, in terms of your own professionalism and how you do it. And it's, you know, there's a role model in nearly everyone, and it's just taking what you think is going to work for you.
Yeah.
But equally identify, you know, what perhaps makes them successful, or a person you can look up to as well.
Yeah. Did you realize at a point in your career as well that you're probably starting to be seen as a role model? When did that shift kind of happen? But actually, people are going to be looking to me as a leader suddenly.
That's a great question. I think I recognized that in particular running the IT graduate program many years ago. So I could tell very quickly, you know, that these young people were coming out of university. And I was managing this program, and to some degree, you know, managing the beginning of their career path. And very quickly, I could see them coming to me and, you know, either complimenting me on something I did, or equally question me in terms of, well, how do you do that? And what's the best way that I can approach this? And I recognized very quickly that I was becoming a role model.
Yes, it's a shift in mindset, obviously. We are almost out of time, but I just wanted to ask you, do you have any advice for anyone who thinks, who might be interested in a career in tech? Is there anything you wish you'd been told? Yeah,
I'm going to leave this maybe with 2 or 3 points, but the first one is, and we've talked about this, is about growing those connections. So I always say, and I even said it right during the lockdown of the pandemic, nobody will ever say no to a cup of coffee. So it's really important that you reach out. And if you want to have a conversation with somebody, you know, they may not necessarily see you to make the move, but you certainly should be reaching out to them if you really want to know more. And having those connections, it's a bit like having that address book of business friends, and you can call them up and you can call on them, and they're going to come in and out at various stages of your career. So I could have a connection for 20 years ago. And I've had this very recently, actually. It was from a previous job, and someone reached out and said, "Hi, do you remember we worked together back in X?" And so, and that connection has now fired back up again, and that's almost like 20 years later. The second one is about having those great mentors. So, you know, as I said, I've really had some great mentors right throughout my career, but it is really important to identify and seek out mentors who will guide you through the career stages and be honest with you. That's such an incredible, important part of that dynamic between a mentor and a mentee. And also, it's, you know, you need to be a good listener and somebody who has gone before you. And the third point I'd like to leave is that join them, be active with those internal and external communities that are out there for women in technology, like the one I'm in called the T200. Because you never know when you're going to need those connections, but also these women provide a wealth of knowledge and experience, and you never even know, you know, where they might provide that opportunity for the next job or the next role. So I think I'm going to leave it with, you know, I'm going to leave it with where I probably started this conversation. And that's, you know, just be curious, take calculated risks, do not shy away from opportunities. And that may, you know, some of them may really seem ambitious, but it's so incredibly important to have that kind of that learning mindset. And you're going to have a phenomenal career ahead of you in technology.
Yes, what a beautiful phrase to end it on. Is positive advice to end it on there, Claire, because we're already out of time. But thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story today. It's been a pleasure.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. And to everybody listening, as always, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again next time.